now. If I was to put it in perspective, I think it was the late 90s, when the print publishers started to disseminate their print journals over CD-ROMs. I think that was the beginning somewhere. And thereafter, of course, in 2000 is the time when if people who were around at that time would remember the famous NASCOM report, and this NASCOM report actually became the basis for many .com businesses. So it wasn't technology was not the word at that point of time. It was, of course, internet, because internet penetration had just about started. We had dial-up connections during those times. And so I think the first hold amongst after the CD-ROM based, case law dissemination, the next hold was essentially the digitized searchable libraries. Right, that is how technology really got introduced and kind of made way within the legal industry. And I think what happened was that the specificity and the customization which search enabled, gave to the lawyers, that kind of made the lawyers or the legal industries cognizant of the power and the relevance of technology. And that is when they kind of started to open up, that yes, technology can be an enabler. So that was, but there was, if I was to remember those times, it was excruciatingly slow pace at which, things were opening up, because that was the time when you had these blocked PCs, right? And if you went to a really good lawyer, who was really doing well, you had this very typical, in the corner of the room, there would be this desk which had this huge PC which was eating up on 80% of the space, and then there would be this, if someone had to dial up, if everyone in the room was told that no one's going to pick up the call, no one's going to make a call, so those were the times. But I think what happened was that once, of course, the internet penetration overall kind of, accelerated the pace. The IT Act of 2000, of course, made a huge impact, right? Because the digitization became a norm. Everyone started to at least digitize the documents. E-signature got an impetus, right? So I think that was the base. Thereafter, between 2005 and 2010, I would say that the internalization of technology started to happen. That was the era during which those 5 years when we saw the news portals, whether it was Legally India, Bar and Bench, which came up. Then you had the international publishing houses, which started to see opportunity within India, and they made a couple of them made foray into India. Juniors started to, they started to prefer online legal research tools vis-a-vis books. So that was the next hold. Thereafter, I would say 2010 to 2015. That's when technology went beyond legal research. That is when legal services were enabled by legal technology. So, be it whether it was edtech platforms, whether it was marketplaces, which got, the clients and the lawyers together, whether it was, legal jobs, legal recruiters going online, even amongst horizontal, something like Naukri started to focus on legal per se. Within search also, that's when AI, ML, NLP, smart search, Boolean became passé. So that was one area. And then, of course, 2015 onwards, I think we have all seen there has been a complete sprint. The pandemic has, of course, changed the acceleration pace. And, whether it is e-signatures, compliance, contracts, practice management, you have legal incubators, you have legal innovation awards, which are happening. Agami, organizations like Agami doing work on the change maker for justice. So there's so much of which is happening. So clearly, from very simple solutions to complex solutions is what we've seen. And clearly, I think by and large, even if you look at people might not know that they're using technology, right? But technology is an enabler, and that is where we stand today.
Absolutely on point. On that note, I would pose my next question to Stephen. Just benefits of being data-driven to build trust and maintain relationships, Stephen. And we've seen that a complete overhaul in that entire system, right? When it comes to, we've progressed from a time where just for instance, law firm partners would come back from a meeting, they would have a visiting card. That visiting card would be punched in, and nobody really knew what happened with that information sort of later. How has the entire overlooking of this aspect changed, and what would you like to say about that?
Right. So hi, everybody. My name is Stephen from NEXL. Glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation. So right, I think as Priyanka mentioned, part of the changes that we've seen is that also in the administration of our organizations, legal tech has started to play a very important role with practice management or case management systems, both within private practice, but also in the judicial system. And that has kind of expanded into document management systems, into CRM systems, which is what we do. And I think if you look at it, if you take it a few steps back and you look at what's happening in the market right now, I think there's this realization that there's so much data out there already, which perhaps we're not actually making use of. So our approach and our vision is really to, first of all, create awareness of all of the data flows and all of the information that we already generate when doing business, when building relationships, when you go to a conference and come back with a stack of business cards. All of these use cases make it very clear that actually the way we go about these processes is not very efficient. We tend to duplicate, recreate information that in a way already exists. Again, to pick up on a point that Priyanka said, as we move from simple standalone solutions towards more complex and integrated solutions, I think we also are starting to see and to realize that this integrated approach also means that we should better understand what's already out there and leverage the information and the intelligence that is kind of hidden in that information. And that is the way we do it with NEXL, for instance, where we just look at metadata generated by interactions on the email server. I mean, that's where most of us live. And then basically on all that information, on this information flow, we recreate profiles in an automated way. So once you understand which kind of pools of data you're looking at, and you can automate certain processes, that is where a lot of the beauty starts to shine through. That's where a lot of insights start to become visible within the information. And I think a lot has to do with this shift of mindset then, where you no longer start to recreate information, but basically try to read what's already in there and then develop systems around that. So that is one of the things I think that we see a lot going on.
Excellent point. Anshul, coming to you, what are the opportunities for the legal world to take the tech world to actually take the load off using technology, right? It's something that we talk about. We talk about AI, we talk about bots, we talk about easing of services at the very base level. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a very interesting question. And Priyanka rightly mentioned that the pandemic has actually acted like a catalyst for legal tech to be adopted, right? So when we actually started in the legal tech domain, the focus isn't actually pitching legal tech, but the focus is pitching the ROI that a particular solution can really come in, right? To be honest, AI, ML, these are fancy words. The lawyer or the legal team, what they care about is, are you reducing my time? Are you able to increase my billable hours? Are you able to increase revenue, right? So that's, I think, the lingo that typically you would like to engage with. So a lot of interesting things, right? Like if you see the shift of solutions that were there, let's say 3 years ago, and now it's completely different, right? So for example, at Mike Legal, when we started the company, we started with saying that, okay, how can we make the process of trademarks much easier, right? So when we started, we had people going through 8,000 pages manually, flipping them to see what's similar. And we said, hey, you don't need to really do that. You can actually use an algorithm to actually compare those trademarks. And here on the dashboard, you can see the similar infringements. So what actually ended up happening is where the associates were spending, let's say, 2 weeks, they were now spending a day on that process, and they were actually able to cite 30% more oppositions, which actually resulted in more revenue. Right? Similarly, for example, we have a tool around contract proofreading, which at the end of the day helps legal teams automate the process of identifying errors in the contract. So legal tech, I think what a lot of people have really got into is, legal tech is very difficult to understand. It's very confusing. How do I really adopt it? At the end of the day, it's like a what I like to say is it's like an associate in your pocket, right? Where you can actually use it for your mundane, manual, repetitive tasks. So you can actually have the flexibility to look at tasks that actually add more value to the organization, business development, higher client service, etc. So I think that's my outlook towards how legal tech is approached, and the opportunities are immense, right? Because today, if you look at legal tech in general, from my experience, I've realized that if you're able to create a very good solution at a cost-efficient price, legal teams are such that could actually become your customer for years and years, right? So the long time, the lifetime customer value is actually quite high. So I think that's where a lot of interesting stuff is happening in India and even globally.
Very, very pertinent point. So now, just a question to all three of you. We talk in, we often talk about products and silos and what can one product do for you. But just in terms of the entire gamut of legal tech solutions that are available today, would you throw some light on how all of these solutions, a combination of these, some of these, can actually help scale your practice, right? And also encourage your team to, one, innovate, and I think two, strategically think about or focus on facts that truly need their focus, which is actually the matter in question. It could be a corporate matter, it could be a litigation matter, but would all three of you just throw light on those two aspects? Priyanka, why don't you start first?
One, I would just add to what Anshul said. I mean, very clearly, I mean, as AI, ML are very fancy words, and that's why if you really go by the poll, if you had not put in AI, ML, maybe you would have 100% people saying that they do understand that they're using legal tech. Everyone is using it in some way or the other. Coming to and it's actually the use cases, which is at the end of the day what lawyers understand. So answering your question, Neha, here, I mean, if I was just to take an example, for example, I mean, Manupatra just during the pandemic, we launched a practice management platform for legal team, both for corporate legal teams and for law practices. Now, a very simple thing of being able to find the right document at the right time, right? Or if there is an exit from the, from the company or from the firm, right? Someone who's been handling everything, all that archived data, the knowledge, all of that is retained instead of going away with the person. Or if there has if in case there is no overlap between the new joinee, right? Instead of reinventing the wheel each time, right? There is a firm, there is a branch office in say Ahmedabad, which has done a matter on something on environment, and something similar comes up with the Delhi branch, right? Instead of reinventing, if you have a knowledge base, which everyone within the firm can use. So reusing that data instead of each time recreating the wheel. So very simple things. Now, if I was just to take one example and take it through, you get a client. I mean, we just talked about visiting cards being scanned and uploaded, right? So fine, even if you do that bit, you go to a conference, you get your data, whether it is in CSV file or a hard copy card, which you scan and put in the data, you know that you need to chase this prospect. You know what exactly has happened at each point, who has followed up, whether it has been followed up or it hasn't. Now, tomorrow, this one converts into a client, right? Once they convert into a client, the matter comes in, there are 15 people working on it. Each time the team does not need to go and ask that, who's working on this. You have a single unified platform which tells you that these are the people who are working on it. This is where this is the status of everything. This is the conversation which has been exchanged between whether with the client or within the teams. Now, if you give an extension of that to the client as well, so the clients, they're forever complaining that the lawyers are not responsive. You've got to chase them for, what's happened with the case, or, whether an order has come in, when is the next hearing date, where do we stand, has the response been filed, etc., etc. Now, if you give authorized access to the client and basically share with the client the information that they require. Just think of the amount of communication that you're cutting out. And this is a time which can then be utilized by the people for, as you said, whether, whether to increase their billable hours for more innovative solutions, because the moment you free up more time, that's when people start to think. Right now, you're always under the pump of, chasing the administrative matters as well. You do not realize, but every whether it's an associate or a partner at each level, everyone is putting in a majority chunk of time in administrative matters. So at each stage, very simple things, but I think the challenge which we may see is that over the last few years, everyone has started to use bits and bits of solutions. Now today, what has happened is that today, majority again are using multiple solutions which are scattered again, right? So somewhere that kind of defeats the purpose of technology actually bringing in the efficiency and productivity that we want. So I think what we really need is right from the beginning till the end, and when from the intake to the closure, and after the closure, you also archive the matter within the same platform is what you basically require.
Got it. Stephen, your take on it?
Yes, so I think scalability in a way is a function of two things, right? It's a function of your infrastructure, but it's also a function of your operational model, kind of your organizational design. And so if you ask whether and how tech solution can scale your business and your teams, I think we have to look at those two things. And Priyanka rightly pointed out to this idea of unification, right? Of the different pockets and isolated products, which really start to become a challenge for sort of the early adopters that have innovated perhaps certain aspects of the business that have brought on people that had a niche expertise, which they kind of scaled through technology. But you really have to look at this from a strategic perspective and from sort of a long-term and firm-wide angle, because otherwise you risk this fragmentation, which really will jeopardize the overall value which you will eventually create or gain by the technology. And so I think when you look at that, of course, the arrival of cloud-based systems really has changed the game, right? I think there we are now seeing a sort of an explosion of new products, but most of them are more easily integrated than the previous generations, because most of them in a way are cloud-based or are built on the ecosystems or the infrastructure of the big tech players. And that, I think, also explains what or how the enormous success of these huge companies, the Microsofts and the Googles of this world, are getting, because basically it's the only way to ensure a certain degree of unification in your tech deployments. So I think that is one part of the equation. The other one, of course, as I mentioned, is that the organizational design, of course, matters very much as well if you think about scalability. And I think there also law firms have traditionally been very bad in a way. Law firms are as everybody knows, composed of very autonomous, independent people, sometimes practice groups or practice areas with very divergent client bases, know-how systems, networks. So bringing this all together and make sure that everybody is focused on the right direction is a precursor to creating this kind of scalability. And interesting, I think in a way, the software as a service model, it kind of combines both things, right? Because through the as a service component in lots of the things that we do, we need to look at both that infrastructure component and at the underlying business model or organizational design, if you wish, as well. So those would be a couple of sort of thoughts around scalability from my side.
Excellent. Anshul, coming to you.
Sure. So Neha, we actually have a very different, I would say, kind of like a checklist at Mike Legal when we look at scalability, right? So whenever we look at building a solution for the legal market, we look at few checklists, right? Is the process mundane? Is it repetitive? Is it manual? But more importantly, is it essential for the firm? Right. So we typically don't want to automate any process which, let's say, the law firm is doing once in 2 months, right? Or we don't want to automate a process that is mundane but not really important. So what we have actually created is a checklist at Mike Legal that we typically would look at tasks that check these boxes, because this is what is actually affecting the scalability problem, right? And I'll give you use cases from our own experience. So we had a boutique law firm, say 6 associates, really looking at growing through the pandemic, getting some really good clients. But the challenge was that they didn't have the resources to say that I can go from 6 associates to 30 associates, right? So they had to they have to maintain the quality of work. They need to increase the work. So they need to actually put the associates, more time of the associate. So that's where legal tech came in, where, let's say, our solution around contract proofreading, right? So just imagine the associate previously had to go to a 50-page contract, word after word, checking if there are any inconsistencies, right? So instead of 10 crores, have you written 10 lakhs, right? Or, have you defined a term but not used it, right? So that previously would actually make the associate spend 2 or 3 of non-billable time. Now, with our solution, that has come down to, say, half an hour. So that directly has affected the ROI that the firm is getting from the associate. So I think when we look at scalability, I think it's very important for the firm to understand what process is causing them to not scale to the level they want, and then fix that. Because if you don't recognize what the issue is, right, as you're scaling the business, you won't really know what solution also to bring, right? There could be hundreds of solutions out there, but if you don't recognize the problem, it is of no consequence. So typically in our experience of selling legal tech, we've understood that law firms typically like to look at processes which are mundane, manual, but very, very important. That's easier to sell, and that's where the question of scalability becomes easier to talk to them about.
Okay, so taking a cue from that, Priyanka and Stephen, why don't you also throw some light on the fact that how did the products that you both have, right? The products that Manupatra has and NEXL has. How did you actually come about making those products? Did you actually go out to the market, understand the need, or was it through observation? Was it through conversation? And after the product came into being, did you actually notice that the people who had posed the problem, or who had actually defined the problem, were willing to take on the solutions very easily, because it was tech-based, right? So it's and I'll come back to Anshul here, because in our experience, what we've seen, is that you know what the problem is. You are okay to define it, but I think there's been, and this may be just our limited experience, but it'll be good to know if you've seen that after there's resistance to adapting or adopting technology. That's my bottom line. So they may not be averse to getting a solution to their problem, but even after they've defined what the solution is or what the problem is, has there been resistance at the client end? Priyanka, why don't we start with you?
Many questions there. Okay, quickly on Manupatra, look, in terms of Manupatra, there was really no, I mean, everything that we did, we pretty much, started from the scratch. I think the whole basis behind Manupatra as a legal research database was that India is a litigation-prone society. Tons and tons and tons of documents being churned out every day, whether it was the courts across or the government, the state governments, the central government. And that's what we said that, and we of course saw, we saw Lexis and Westlaw, how they were being used internationally. And we said that, there definitely is a requirement for something similar in India. So that was the genesis. And of course, I mean, having started with a basic search, Boolean, I mean, we moved on to analytics, visualization, NLP at all. And I mean, it's something which, it's something which is going to evolve, because we believe that we have clearly seen that, the time taken on research over the years, how it is going down and how research is becoming better. So it is now quality over quantity. In the very early years, if I just talk about 2001, when we went to the market, I mean, there are one or two examples. We were of course trying to meet the sitting judges to take their feedback, and there weren't many who were very familiar with computer or who were willing to even look at something like an online legal research tool. So there was we were lucky to have this appointment with one of the sitting Supreme Court judges who had come from the Bombay High Court. And so, I mean, after listening to us for 2 minutes as to what it was, so he said, okay, I have a test for you. Let's see if it happens, then we'll talk further. And his law clerk had spent apparently 3.5 hours looking for a particular judgment. And of course, AIR was the Bible, and possibly was the only thing which was being used at that point of time. And so he just talked about the proposition and what exactly they were looking for. And I mean, we just went and used the Boolean search, and of course internet bandwidth wasn't like what it is today, but I think in about an hour and 1 minute and 30 seconds or something, he just got the exact result that he was looking for, which his clerk had spent about 3.5 hours doing. So so that was the first one. The second interesting one that I remember, I mean there are many. So we had again in the very early years, we had this presentation in front of the sitting Delhi High Court judges, and I think we had about 15-16 judges post court hours, and so we started the presentation. We first showed what we wanted to, and then they started to give us queries, and we kept on finding solutions to each of the queries which were coming. And then one of the honorable judges, he told the Chief Justice that, sir, I think we're giving very easy ones. Let's give them a tricky one. So the Chief Justice then was late Justice S.B. Sinha, and he said, okay, so I'm looking for a case law which defines that whether a banana plant is a shrub or a tree. Okay, and I remember sitting there. I said, okay, this is it. This is the end of our rolling time, but proximity search to the rescue. And the first and the only judgment which came up was a judgment by Justice Sinha, which he had given in Calcutta High Court. Right. So of course, one has seen that how. I mean, the utility there is direct. I mean, it's right there. You have a database which goes back to 1844. So any kind of documents, so whether you're looking for a case law, you're looking for a notification, looking for a statute, amendment, report, etc. All of that is there. Our latest product, MyCase, which is a cloud-based SaaS product, which essentially basically for a corporate legal teams, it starts from request management. Right. So, of course, we went back and we saw, so over the years, during various interactions, one has been getting feedback as to what are the pain points in the operations within, whether it is in-house, whether it's a corporate legal team or a law practice. So with the request, very clearly it was that the request from various departments was coming in, either through on the phone call, or there was a paper which was sent, or in the lift you bumped into someone and said, hey, this is it. Can you just look this up for me? Or over the coffee machine, right? So, I mean, everything was all over and in every which way possible. So now we start with the request management, wherein, each of the departments has their own interface, right? So if they have a request, there are forms which are there for different kind of requirements. So HR department or a purchase would have different kind of requirements which they are sending to legal. So they have their own, So each department has their own set of forms. They basically fill up the form and they send it over the platform to the corporate legal team. The corporate legal team sees all their requests. They look at what is the nature of the request. Depending upon the nature of the request, it is assigned to one of the corporate legal team members. Any kind of query back and forth, everything is happening over. All of that is linked to that particular request. So even if tomorrow, if I'm handling it, and tomorrow if one of you has to come and take it over, then you exactly have the history of what has happened. Once the corporate legal team has verified that yes, this is a request that they need, that they're going to be working on it, they have a certain due date which has been marked by the department. Then they can do their analysis on, how much is it, how many people, who's going to be working on it, how many hours, what is the kind of, money that we're looking at here, what is the level of, is it critical, the risk, everything is defined right there. And then it becomes a matter. Once it becomes a matter, then you obviously, everyone who's working on that matter, everything is defined, everyone has a view into it, right? And then there is an authorized access, because one of the things that everyone is very within the legal industry, specifically privacy and security, right? Two things which are something that each of our demos, this is a question which is asked at least 5 or 6 times, in different which ways. So right from the intake till the, if it is a litigation matter, when is your next hearing date, everything is getting populated. Everyone is on the same page at each point of time. Any kind of communication is linked. So you're not going to 10 different inboxes or 10 different WhatsApp or Slack chats to look at, conversations which have happened. Everything is bound to each respective matter, whether it is a task which is assigned, whether they are the documents, the audit trail of the documents. So essentially, we, of course, answering your question, of course, we went back. We had inputs on what were the pain points in operations. We kind of did a high level diagram which we run through people, the end users, and once we had the feedback on it, that's how you start development. So with Manupatra, it was a completely different story, because there was no market to really go to. I mean, it was a concept. I mean, Manupatra for initial 8 years was concept sell. But with my case, it has been completely on the other side, wherein people understand technology, they realize that they need it, so the resistance is not as much. So answering your question on resistance to change, Manupatra was complete. But though having said that, while people realize that they need a practice management platform, when we've gone to the market today, it is still a concept set. Because there would be a time when they will, when the associates or the teams will need to, run things parallelly. The regular way in which they're doing it, and they will have to do smaller projects or the low-hanging fruits over the, the practice management platform or using technology. And once, they have kind of, they see the results, the advantages, that's when they would be willing to kind of move the bigger pieces to platforms like these.
Got it. Stephen, your take on it and experience.
Yes, so I think it's a complex question indeed, because it kind of touches on all of the steps within the life cycle of a tech project, a legal tech project. You start defining the problem or identifying the problem, and a lot go wrong there already, and that wouldn't be a good start. But then you have the solution building, which tries to find technological ways to solve the question. But of course, these technologies need to work in the business context, in a larger framework. And then finally, you talk about adoption, right? How do you integrate these technologies or these solutions and make sure that people actually make use of it and are able to get to the value which it's supposed to offer. So I think it's an interesting way of looking at it. So let me talk you through the NEXL story, perhaps. One of the important, I mean, and we're definitely working on the commercial side of things, right? So NEXL is a CRM system. Our focus has been always on the issue of growth. How can you grow in ever more competitive markets? What kind of strategies can you develop to grow your practice, to attract new clients, to better manage your clients, and basically create more client loyalty, to expand the value of your clients across their life cycle. So that's our problem and what we've been looking at. When you try to go into more detail, you quickly get to the point of relationship building. I mean, in the end, this is a very relationship-driven industry, and any growth will always be a result of successful human relationships. So for us, it's really about this this relationship building exercise, both on an individual level, where there are certain challenges that people need to meet, and then also on the institutional level, where you have a complex web of relationships that interact with one another, and where the visibility on those dynamics isn't always that clear, or the effects aren't always that clear to everybody at the firm. So that is definitely around sort of the problem solution equation. And we also invested a lot at NEXL, and continue to do so, actually, is we always listen at the final client, right? We always want to make sure that whatever we try to develop is in tune not only with the perception of the problem per se, but also with the needs at the final client side. So we talk a lot with corporate counsel, for instance, and what they tell us is that actually, despite what lawyers tend to think, they're not always that happy by the way lawyers manage that client relationship. There's this big gap between the perception and the reality. So that is an important friction point, I think, in the delivery of legal services, and a friction point that can be solved, but I think by better relationship management technology. When we think about the adoption challenges, I think at least in our case, we always try to create these aha moments, which initially generate a lot of interest and a lot of personal commitment to the product per se. But then we also try to be very clear and tell concrete stories around sort of the use cases, and really try to communicate commercial insights around how the solution can actually translate into value, how the solution can actually translate into better relationships, into better client management practices. That is, I think, one of the key things one needs to keep in mind when thinking about adoption. In terms of the pushback, perhaps, which we have experienced, I think we often still meet that idea that relationships are a personal thing. So these are my clients, these are my relationships, so I don't need anybody else to tell me what to do with that. That is, of course, a very short-sighted way of looking at how a law firm, how a business operates. I mean, as I mentioned, there are these dependencies, there are these interactions that one needs to take into account, especially as you look at larger organizations with multiple offices, with multiple practice areas, where it very often happens. You have these siloed operations of different teams working for the same client, but not looking at synergies, not looking at how you can sort of have a more integrated, coordinated approach to that relationship to basically build and expand. Because if there's one thing that I think has become very clear now these days, that true collaboration pays off. I mean, lots of the work of Heidi Gardner, for instance, really points out to this financial upside to a more collaborative approach to a more coordinated way of relationship management and relationship building. So basically showing the numbers is also a very effective way of making sure that people connect the dots between the problem, the solution, and then what they need to do, what they need to change in order to benefit from those solutions.
Why don't we run a poll before I go to Anshul for my next question? Let's just see if our audience knows the barriers to legal tech. So our audience is basically a mix of course, law firm partners. We've got people from, lawyers, associate level, senior lawyers. We've got law students as well, some scholars from IDIA. So that's the make. Give them a few more seconds for all of them to answer. Okay. So basically, what barriers to legal tech use does your organization face? I think most of it is lack of time to learn tech and lack of tech-savvy users. Also, equally, the lack of familiarity with available technology and lack of well-defined strategy. So Anshul, my next question is to you. In terms of, how do you think leadership can actually help in implementing technology and improve process management and across the board, right? In terms of just, we now have a good understanding of all the products that you all have, and you all have very diverse sort of products, right? Which caters to a very niche requirement of, of a life cycle, in a life cycle of a firm or an individual. All of it plays a massive role. How do you think leadership can help in implementing technology and improve process management?
Sure. So I think for us selling legal tech, we always try to find someone who's like a champion in the organization. It's always the best thing if it's a partner, because having him or her convince the organization about why they need the tool is always better, right? So we always try to engage in a conversation with the partner and try to see what is going to make them tick, right? So is it more that, I'm going to save your associates time, I'm going to help you increase revenue. But I think leadership is very, very essential, because coming back to my earlier point, today, if you look at the legal tech market, there are a bunch of solutions, right? For each problem, say contract management, IP management, practice management. But you would still see the adoption of these softwares fairly low in the Indian law firms. It's still beginning to be there, but it's low because a lot of people don't even realize they have a problem. Right. So I'll give you my example, right? So we started with a contract proofreading tool, which basically, like, as I mentioned, automates contract proofreading. It's a manual task. But a lot of people weren't even aware that such a task could be automated. So they weren't even looking for a solution like that, right? So you got to educate the customer about that. Hey, you actually have a problem like that, and this can actually be solved. So I think the leadership, the first point is problem awareness, right? That I am aware that my law firm or my organization is facing this problem, and I need to scale. And for that, I need these solutions. And I think the second and more important part is that, as the poll also suggested, that a lot of people don't have time to really learn the technology. And that's where leadership comes in, is where, you bought the tool, but you need to onboard the entire firm, right? Because if you just onboard, if you just buy the tool, but you haven't activated the firm, there's no engagement, it's not going to serve anyone's purpose. So I think that's where leadership also needs to come in to say that, hey guys, this tool is a must for everyone to use, and you need to actually spend time doing it, because from a long-term perspective, it is going to bring the firm, a significant ROI. So I think that's where leadership comes in two parts, which is first is problem awareness, and second is focus on adoption. So that's where, from my perspective, leadership plays a huge part in legal tech adoption.
Why don't I go to you, Stephen, now? How have you actually seen any difference? Same question, but if you can give us instances or anecdotes from your experience when you're actually speaking to someone in India and when you're actually catering to your audience in the West, has there been a difference? And what's your take on just the importance of leadership being able to understand and implement technology?
Yes, of course, it's crucial. And I fully concur with the points raised by Anshul. I think there's definitely very different leadership styles out there. I don't think that one is better than the other. I think a lot has to do with the vision of the leadership team, not necessarily sort of the top managing partner. It can be a team or a committee, or there has to be a group committed to basically the future success of the firm, and that realization that technology is going to be an ever increasing part in the mix there. I think there's of course different elements that will determine the outcome beyond leadership as well. You have broader sort of macroeconomic or socioeconomic factors that come into play. When I just look across markets, if I understand your question correctly, I think definitely you have indicators such as respect for the rule of law, or general e-competitiveness within a country, like the access levels to broadband internet. these very basic components, but they need to be there. And we see that in countries that have gone quite far in that respect, or that score very well, these tend to be hotbeds for innovation and for legal tech activity. So there is definitely a correlation there. Other elements, I think, have to do with the competitiveness of the market as well. And I think that relates to the point that Anshul made, that you need to have this problem awareness, and problem awareness tends to increase alongside competition, right? So I think one of the things that we have seen, if we take this global perspective, because we have clients all over the world, is that the activity will rise when competitive pressures increase. So for instance, I used to work in a law firm in Belgium at around 2001, when there was this influx of magic circle firms in the jurisdiction. Like within a span of 2 years, Linklaters, Clifford Chance, Freshfields, Allen Overy, they had all either acquired an existing firm or they had set up an independent operation, and they brought with them very different ways of thinking about the business of law, new concepts, more advanced technology. And that was really kind of a wake-up call for local players to say, okay, we need to confront this pressure. So we need to think about strategies that can make sure that we remain competitive and we don't lose too much business to these new players. So that kind of dynamic is, I think, one of the triggers that will then allow leadership within law firms to come through with more ambitious plans, with bolder visions, with basically proposals that will shake up the status quo, which tends to be a sort of very comfortable position where most law firms tend to find themselves into. So that kind of competitive wake-up call is crucial for leadership to come through with more innovation, more ambitious proposals, including more investment in technologies. And then, of course, the momentum and sort of the political capital that these leaders have, that needs to be translated into real, I would say, pressure, but also recipes for adoption. And then we come back to our earlier point, like how do you force people to use the technologies? And I think force is never going to be a great idea. So there, I think leadership needs to work around purpose. I think that is one of the key words. I think people will only change when they understand the purpose and the benefits of that change. I always tend to remind myself of this scene in The Matrix. I don't know if you saw those movies, but at some point Neo is talking to one of the guys in the underground city, and they're looking at the machines, and the guy tells an interesting story about, actually, I don't understand how this all works, but I understand the purpose of what's going on here. And that purpose is so much more important than technical understanding. I think the learning process needs to be there. Of course, you need training sessions, you need people that will help people to overcome their initial fears around integrating technology in their day-to-day lives. But it has to be preceded by that vision, by a really purpose-built approach to legal tech. Otherwise, it's going to be a tricky game.
That's a good point. Priyanka, your take on the same question?
I think both Anshul and Stephen have pretty much summarized it. I think one is, of course, digital. Any business needs to first define what digital means to them, because it would mean different to different people, to their operations, to what they're, and as Anshul said, they need to first understand what do they need it for, right? So first define what it means to you. Next comes in, of course, the strategy as to, what is it that you're trying to achieve. And thereafter, why. The why needs to be defined, and the why needs to be communicated to everyone across, because you can't just presume that we have decided, 4 people have decided that this is going to be done and this has to be done. If you don't get a buy-in from the team, it's a non-starter. So it's a precursor which to any adoption of technology or any tool, however big or small. I mean, you need to have a buy-in from the team, and all of this has to be led from the top. And so to that extent, I think adoption of technology is of course about technology. You need tech, you need to be tech savvy, you need some champions, but it is equally about people. And then the points which Anshul and Stephen just shared, that making the time to train the team, to tell them what. I mean, you can't expect that you got to be doing regular work which is happening at the same time you got to learn this. There has to be some kind of a balance, right? I mean, there are different ways of putting it across, which I think again it would depend upon the kind of group of people that you're addressing. So completely a cultural change, which has to be and a cultural change can only be led from the top. Wherein digital first is, in a way, you kind of make it as a part of your DNA, part of the DNA of the team. How to improve processes and constantly keep on doing it, because there's no cut-off date to that. I mean, with technology, whatever we are using today, tomorrow will be something else. So, you got to evolve. So it's not only about just this product or this tool. There would be a different version of the tool that you're using today. So clearly, I mean, without the leadership buy-in, without the leadership leading it, so I think what Anshul just mentioned, that the way they are approaching it, I mean, that's a way to do it. Because yes, I mean, for a coming couple of years, I mean, all of this is, especially in India, it will continue to be a concept cell, and there's no way that you can start from from below and move up.
Correct. So on that note, we have a very pertinent question here. I think it's from Divpreet Kaur, who's a student, who says that how can we as first generation lawyers access the tools that help us hone our skills that are required for every law firm or any job for that matter? Because first of all, in many law schools here, we don't have access to these databases. And because digitally speaking, it's a major issue we face. So, I mean, that's at a fundamental level, right? Denying access to law students at the law school level, right, is you're not able to make the understanding very clear at the law school level, right? So for them to suddenly transition into lawyers who understand the importance of being a digitally savvy lawyer is taken away. Any experiences there? I know, Stephen, this may be a little off thing because this is mostly pertaining to Indian law schools, but Anshul, Priyanka, any take on that? Anshul, why don't you go first?
You want to go first?
Sure, Priyanka, go ahead.
No, I thought if you want to go first.
Okay, fine, I'll go ahead. I think that's a very interesting question. I think a lot of legal tech companies now have started to kind of like give discounts or give free access to students, right? So I feel at the law school management needs to put this forward, because today, right, if I take Manupatra's example, you can't have anyone join a law firm not knowing the best ways how to use Manupatra, right? Because you can't expect someone to be training in the firm that, okay, this is how you use Manupatra, right? Or for example, in our case, if person is joining an IP firm, for example, how to use, the trademark search tool in the best way. These are things that, law students need to know today, because that is how they'll become lawyers of the future, right? If they are doing the same methodologies, what they were doing 10 years ago, and then expecting that suddenly you join a law firm, that's where you get open to technology, it creates a huge gap. Right. And that's where the problem again comes in, that, I don't know how to use technology in the best way. That's where a lot of times legal tech companies fail, because even though the solution is really good, the user does not know how to best use it. And that's where the ROI doesn't come. So I think it's very, very important. I think a lot of companies now have started to provide discounts. So if the law school is not providing, definitely recommend law students to actually see if they can do it on an individual basis, because it definitely gives them an edge over the other candidates also.
Priyanka, your take?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of legal research tool, I can definitely say about Manupatra that in case your college is not subscribing directly and you do not have access, we have sessions which keep on happening from time to time, wherein we also give hands-on training to the students who sign up for these, whether these are webinars or training sessions or workshops that we do. So you can always, follow us on LinkedIn and you'll get the news. That's one part of it. In terms of, I think there's been a lot of, lately one has been seeing a lot of talk about the syllabus being to include legal tech in the syllabus of the colleges. So I think now that the conversations have started, one can hope, so there is that awareness for sure. So one can see something happening. The next is that, there's so many webinars and workshops, etc., which are happening, and majority are free, right? And even if they're paid, it's worth going and spending, making that investment, because these are pretty small tabs that we're talking about. So I think in participating in all of these online workshops and webinars would definitely, and plus then you have many courses being given by the, likes of Coursera's and Allison's, etc. Which can definitely, so just keep on adding brick by brick to your knowledge, and I think that would at least give you a base to start off from.
Yeah, I think just adding 2 cents there. Dilpreet, you were the one who asked the question. So if your college is not already subscribing, I think it's very surprising, because I went to law school in 2002. I would understand at that point there were barely any solutions available, but we still had Manupatra, and it's very pertinent that all the students get together and write to the management and make sure that you get the subscription going. If that's not possible, and if you've already tried that, then maybe a good way to approach it is what Priyanka said. There is a lot happening right now. Follow the right people, follow the right companies on LinkedIn. I think by doing that, by covering that very basic step, you will become aware of a lot of things that are happening. And I think it is worth your time, just enrolling for courses that upskill you in terms of research skills, writing skills, and there are many service providers out there. So just know that you need to invest your energy and time into this space if the college is not doing that for you. So yeah, those are my 2 cents. I'll go on to my next question. So there's been a massive debate about how AI and technology bots are going to be, okay, I'll stop there. I think there's one more question that's come. Post-COVID, what are the pain areas which a corporate legal team is facing today? And what tech tools are solving this problem? It's from Matthew. Stephen, you want to take that one first?
Sure. Well, I think COVID has done many things, right? It has acted as a catalyst, as we already mentioned in this conversation. It has sped up a lot of processes that were already ongoing, but sort of put a booster on those changes in the marketplace. I think one of the main issues which we will see in the longer term is around on-the-job training, if you wish, and the transmission of certain skills and relationships which tend to occur better in person than on a virtual level. I think that it's not entirely clear yet how the post-COVID world will look like, because I think we haven't reached the end of the pandemic by any means at all. So a lot will depend on the way firms and corporate legal departments will organize their legal teams going forward, whether that will be sort of a mix of remote and in-office operations. I think definitely from our perspective, one of the key challenges in this environment is how can you create long-lasting, intimate relationships and build trust across these digital platforms. And I think that is a very important challenge. where I think technology can offer a way to help us, even if it is from a distance, or even if it's on Zoom calls, etc. There are definitely strategies where the exercise of relationship building and caring and relationship management can benefit from technology. And we tend to associate technology with this kind of cold-hearted approach to relationships. I think at NEXL, we strongly believe in the opposite. I think that technology can offer people ways to develop better, closer, stronger, more humane relationships. And that is through very sometimes simple tools. One of our popular features, for instance, in NEXL is what we call the stay in touch reminders. Our brain is just not wired to keep track of all of the important people that we talk to, and sort of the way time evolves it's very different. So we try to give people access to tools that allow them to stay closer to their most valuable contacts, to stay on top of relationships, to make sure that people don't drift away simply because we forget about reaching out. So these kind of simple things might be potentially solving that issue. But then again, the idea of diversity, I think, is also a crucial thing. Diversity and cross-pollination only really occurs in certain social settings that are just very difficult to replicate in a virtual environment. And I think one of the defining competitive features of law firms going forward is kind of that cognitive diversity and that ability to mix talents and to mix people from different backgrounds with very different skills. In particular, the sort of the marriage between the legal brains and the technology people. I mean, it's super difficult to achieve. We see that all the time. They really speak different languages very often, and law firms that don't invest in a culture where this cognitive diversity is embraced, they will fall behind, because they will not have the capacity, the institutional capacity, to adopt innovations in the marketplace and put them at work for the benefit of their clients. So it's a challenging time. I think there's yet still a lot to be seen as to what the final effects will be of this pandemic. Yeah, we always go back to relationship building, collaboration, strong and clear lines of communications with your key stakeholders. That is going to be an essential part in any kind of context.
So coming to my my next question, there's been a lot of debate about when we talk about technology, and I think I've seen that in the publication world especially. So you talk about the importance and relevance of technology, and you talk about different products that are available. And suddenly on day 3, there is an article about the threat people feel about technology, bots, and AI taking over the legal careers. The fact that they will replace us all, and it's and a lot of resistance there, because this is sort of a perception that's been created. Would you like to bust that myth completely? Because I mean, we understand that, we know that doesn't happen. That's not the intent of legal tech. Nobody can actually take away from the human to human interaction. But what technology actually does is just free up your time to make sure you focus mostly on matters that are truly of significance when it comes to scaling of business, when it comes to researching for relevant sort of case laws. Also, just this basics of just everyday operation. Anshul, would you like to take that first?
Yeah, Neha, so I think you've put it quite well. My opinion is that this thought that legal tech or AI is going to take up my job usually comes from lack of understanding of legal tech, right? I think if any lawyer feels that they're going to take my job, I think then the lawyer really needs to retrospect about what they're doing, right? Because at the end of the day, if you look at any technology, right, using AI, ML, anything, these are all just to help the lawyer get to better tasks, right? And if the lawyer feels that, they don't want these solutions, they want to hold it back, the sad part is in the next few years, they will get disrupted, right? Because a lawyer with technology will overpower a lawyer with no technology, right? So if you look at any solution from practice management, case law research, contract proofreading, IP management, these are all geared towards helping associates take better decisions. So we always like to say that, we're like an associate in your pocket, right? Give us the mundane task and we will give you, data in the fastest way possible so you can make better decisions, you can provide better client service and actually scale. So I think it's just as simple as that, right? Like the technology is there to help you, not to take your job.
I think if I was to add, I mean, yes, technology is purely an enabler. It's not here. I mean, they're just there to, complement what you're doing to bring about more efficiency and greater productivity. At the same time, I think the top management or whoever's leading the adoption needs to still have this realistic outlook and kind of, from time to time address these issues of the team. Because everything said and done, I mean, these are very natural feelings which people have. I mean, Y2K was a time, I mean, I was part of the banking industry at that point of time when this whole Y2K thing had happened. And I still remember, I mean, I was just, fresh into job at that point of time. And yet it was such a thing that as if, people, as if there would be millions and millions of people who would be losing the job because of this whole computerization thing. But all it did was it increased the number of jobs.
Exactly.
So I think it's about being what technology is here to do is to help you utilize your time better, do something more meaningful, something that you have been trained to do something which is more subject specific, and it is here to essentially take care of the repetitive work, the rote work, and so that is it's basically there as a friend and it's not a foe. I mean, that's something which everyone just kind of needs to remember.
Stephen, your take?
Yeah, I fully agree with the points made here. I think in a way we all have to reinvent ourselves all of the time. I mean, that is part of the modern world. That is part of the dynamics in the current business environment. We cannot keep on doing what we used to do. We need to leverage the benefits and the efficiencies that new technologies can bring us, and scale up. I mean, the classical value pyramid of professional services is there for everybody to see, and it's up to the lawyers themselves to climb that ladder. And in a way, I think that some of the menial tasks of more junior lawyers or business professionals in law firms will be automated away. There's no doubt about that. I mean, if you look at what we do at NEXL, as early as maybe 5-6 years ago, I deployed CRM projects where we used to hire data stewards to sort of deduplicate information, to update and harmonize databases and contact lists. NEXL has really automated away these kind of jobs, so they're no longer there. So in a way, that is not it is not such a vain threat as it may appear. And I fully agree to your view, Neha, that in the end robots will not take over. But there are certain tasks and there are certain functionalities or functions within organizations that will disappear, or that will become less valuable. And so it's up to the people that occupy those positions, that perform these tasks and duties, to rethink what they do and how they can add value to the business. And there's plenty of ways to move up, to scale up, to reinvent what you do, to reassess the value you contribute to the organization. And I think people need to discuss that. I think one of the key factors to achieve successful organizations in this new digital era is creating spaces for people to converse about these things. The issue is that we've often come to believe that IT is a department, that it is a select group of people that are specialized in it, so that the rest of the firm doesn't have to care about that. And I think that has proven to be a very, very wrong way of looking at things. Technology is something that concerns us all, and we need to open up. We need to understand the basics of what's going on. We don't need to understand the machines again, but we need to understand the impact the machines have on the way we organize our business, on the way we manage our firms, on the way we deliver our client services. And then it's up to everybody to create their own path, to see opportunities and also certain threats that I think in some places are quite real.
Neha, if I can just add a quick point here, I think what Priyanka mentioned was quite interesting, because a pattern that we have seen is that a lot of law firms now, at least the tier 1 firms, have started to create a position of CIO, right, Chief Information Officer, where one of the main tasks is to actually look at what type of technology needs to be onboarded. So I think legal tech is not just going to help people do better tasks, but also create new job opportunities.
Absolutely. So I think I completely agree there with all of you. And Stephen, very, very pertinent point that yes, some jobs are definitely going to become redundant, right? Because I think the importance of technology is that a lot of the mundane tasks can be automated, and it doesn't take away from the value add of the person. But I think, like you rightly said, that the person needs to understand how are you adding value, right, to that particular job, and accordingly upskill, upgrade yourself, and that's how you stay relevant. Because I think it's true for everyone, right? So for instance, I still remember, I hope it has changed, but what I saw at firms even 3 to 4 years back is to send out or to check for conflict when a matter comes in. You were sending an email to a bunch of 300, 400 lawyers. And basically what you're doing is you're waiting for them to respond. Now, something as simple as conflict check, it doesn't take a lot of time for you to send out that email, but then you're actually waiting to act on that mandate or matter that's coming, or an inquiry that's coming, an RFP that you could be working on, only because you've spent 2 whole days waiting to hear from each partner saying, it's clear, there's no conflict. It's something as basic as that. And so AI may not create a job for someone to be checking conflict there, but it'll actually help you save that time, because you'll be able to check conflict very, very quickly. So something as basic as that, right? Like you said,
if I'll add to that, because you mentioned conflict management. So,
yes,
this
please.
is what we do in my case. That precisely, you just go and put in, and it's not only the company name or the director's name, we are also carrying the spouse's name, or the first relation, so that you exactly know. You go and you just search. So instead of you spend that 5 minutes or 10 minutes putting in different options, and you just see whether you've already handled something or some other branch has handled it, and so your 2 days have been saved. And another matter on legal research, if I would, so a lot of, there are many legal research databases today, and everyone is talking about using AI and ML. But what that is basically doing is, what AI and ML does is that it gives you more specific results, relevant results. But at the end of the day, it is the individual who is going to be looking at those and saying that, this is the one that I'm going to be using. This is the one really which applies to me. It is not technology which is really making that. So obviously humans are not being replaced at all.
Maybe just to pick up on those points as well, I think there are still so many opportunities to do things more efficiently, and I think the use case of conflict check is very on point. But sometimes it's even more menial stuff, if I see sometimes how people lose time scheduling meetings whilst you have things like Calendly and these very easy, super easy to use and understand and often free tools to basically do those processes more efficiently, I still wonder why people are not using it more. There is still, I think, a big opportunity for the legal sector to do much more with these tools. When I look at, from our perspective, for instance, we often look at business planning processes as also something which is still something considered from sort of an analog point of view, because people then don't tend to think that there's technology that can help you do strategic planning or business planning. But there is, and there are so many tools available now around objective setting, the whole I think narrative of OKRs and how you can sort of manage by objectives. That hasn't permeated in legal at all, at least from what we've seen. And when we ask, what are your plans? What are your business plans? They refer to some kind of Word document and nobody really knows where it is. And let alone that there's any process around managing results or outcomes, a regular follow-up, sort of alignment of objectives of the different teams within the firm. There's really easy to use tools out there that can really change the nature of those practices and really improve the efficiency of these processes. So still a lot of room and opportunity to do better, I would say.
Absolutely. Now, just to sum it up, can we have 3 tips that you all may have? It could be pertaining to product, it could be pertaining to adaptability of technology, just the entire universe of legal tech, maybe. Anshul, do you want to go first?
Sure. I think the first tip, and I've spoken about this quite a bit, is problem awareness, both from the legal tech side and the legal team side, right? So we as a company who's building the product need to be aware what type of problem we're trying to solve, who is the customer at the end of the day, what value we're creating. And for the legal team, the manager or the partner needs to be aware about what's the bottleneck that's causing him not to really scale to the level he or she wants. So what type of problem he's facing, what solution needs to come in. I think the second bit is successful onboarding, right? So one of the challenges we've seen in legal tech is typically solutions who take much more effort in training or setting up tend to have a lower adoption rate compared to let's say something like at a click of a button you can get the detailing. So from someone who's building a legal tech company, recommendation would always be that look at how you can reduce the onboarding time and can actually give results faster. And from a partner's perspective, the focus is that you need to put your foot down and get the firm to onboard the solution, activate everyone, because only then you'll see ROI, right? So it's not just on the legal tech company, but on you also to actually have a successful, onboarding and activation. And I think the third very interesting thing is budgeting for legal tech, right? How do you really budget for legal tech? So in our experience, what we tend to tell clients is the ROI that we can give them, right? So if let's say they're spending, $1 lakh on an associate per month, we're able to reduce the associate's time by 20%, save them that much money. So that's the type of conversations we have. So a lot of firms today who are not even aware of legal tech, to budget for legal tech is very difficult. So the easiest way to look at it is look at it from a form of investment for the future scalability of the company, right? So it's not like you have to fire someone or you need to let someone go, but it's more about what's the investment required to get the solution that can help you get a 20% increase in revenue, 30% increase. So those would be few pointers from my end.
Priyanka, you want to go next?
So I would say that from a, because there is a lot of talk about practice management tools today, when you're looking at, solutions, do not look at multiple small bits of solutions. Look for one single solution as far as possible so that, you're not jumping from tool to tool, app to app, and software to software. Because if you do that, then, one tends to kind of say, let's just get started and possibly adopt multiple tools. Then few months or sometime down the line, you're looking at trying to integrate all of them, which means that you're spending more time and more money on that. Instead, so obviously going back to what Anshul was saying, that, first identify what is your problem area. So take few steps back, plan it out, identify what are your pain areas, what kind of technology or technology enabled tools can help you. So take it as a plan. Don't just jump into it just because you're under the pump to, adopt technology. So that has to be the first step. On the legal research part, after all these years, what I would suggest is that when you are looking at a legal research tool, you have to now look at, the relevancy of searches that you get, because at the end of the day, you need to be researching smarter and faster, right? So look at the tool that you're taking. How fast is it? And fast does not come only with bandwidth, or it is how cross referenced your the database is, forward referencing, backward referencing, whether it tells you it's good law or bad law when you get results instead of you trying to look for it. How hyperlinked it is. You have a document that you're reading, it has references to many primary and secondary references. Does it take you directly to that? Does it take you to the section 138, or does it take you to the section 1 of the act? Small bits, but every bit counts, and it makes your research faster. So these 2 bits from me.
Excellent. Stephen, your pro tips.
Sure, thanks. I think so many good tips already shared here. So when I would think about sort of the key factors that have influenced the level of success of legal projects I've witnessed or I've participated in, I would definitely go towards internal communication. I think that is a function that is highly underestimated in many law firms, precisely because of the fragmentary nature of those organizations and the psychology of lawyers that tends to be focused on the individual, that tends to be inwards. So I think having a platform to share information, having a strong internal communication function is crucial to the success of technology deployment per se. We always, one of my first questions when we go into law firms with a project is, okay, who is in charge of internal communications? Because it is so crucial to have this kind of line towards the rank and file within the firm, who in the end do the job. And very often our key messaging goes to the leadership and sort of a core team of people that drive the project, but the success of the project will depend on the others as well. And so if you don't have a way to reach out to them, to also get feedback from them, to tweak and to adjust where necessary, I think it's gonna be tough. Another thing that we usually advise is involve your clients in whatever strategic projects that you deploy. It's very important to remain wary of the final outcomes and of the final added value that is created by these solutions for the client. We don't do this just for the sake of ourselves or the people within the firm. So why don't we just converse with those people from the very onset of the project? So we advise to basically invite core clients to discuss this project, to get their point of view, to get their vantage points. And we usually get very interesting results from that. And it keeps our eyes on the ball. I think that is a crucial element. We even have examples of, I just worked on a project in Latin America where a firm really did kind of legal hackathon sessions where they involved clients to collaboratively think about new solutions. And I think that for many tech or legal tech solutions, this kind of collaboration and co-creation can really have a big impact. And then finally, I think I would go back to a point I already made around the importance of a clear objective setting, right? We need to align our visions around the business objectives that we try to achieve. We need to think about how people can contribute with very bite-sized, actionable steps in towards the realization of that vision. So in any business and in any project, clear objective setting is also going to be very important.
Points from all of you. Thank you so very much for keeping it crisp, for keeping it very, very relevant. I will just take a few moments to open up the Q&A section if there are any questions. We've got some good comments. People have said, excellent talk. Thank you so much for all the information and insights. This is great. Nivedita says, enjoyed this session and found all the information extremely useful. That's great. If all the participants have any questions, please post them now in the Q&A section or the chat box, whatever is convenient. More than happy to unmute you guys if you want to ask the question yourself. Okay, nothing yet, so I'm guessing no questions. Please feel free to connect with all of our speakers on LinkedIn if you have particular questions you want to ask them. Thank you very much for logging in on a Sunday morning and doing this. Thank you to all our speakers. Thank you for sparing the time. Thank you for being just very, very authentic and honest about your views. And thank you to all the participants. We have a small feedback form in the chat box that we post now. If you could just spare 2 minutes filling that up, it'll help us. And we'll end that session on that note. We've got a couple of more comments saying very interesting, informative session, sir and ma'am. Happy Teachers Day. And thank you so much. Great session. Those are the comments that we've got.
Thanks a ton, Neha. I mean, this was brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Neha, for setting this up. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks for the invitation, Neha.
Thanks,
Anshul and Stephen. Great.
Thanks,
Nice meeting you.
Priyanka. Thanks, Stephen. Great connecting with you guys.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.